Chapter 55. End of Book 1. Prepare arms! Ready! Aim! Fire! A cascade of bullets thundered from rifles, their trajectory steadied by SMRT technology as they pierced each target's heart. The 14 blindfolded prisoners fell dead, and in that cold prison station above a red jungle world, the last members of the cult of Scan had been extinguished. I squinted my eyes, watching through the one-way glass, watching the final jerking movements of the captives as they bled out on the stained execution dock. The sergeant ordered his men to lower their weapons, and it was over. The chain of murder that had begun nearly 1,000 years ago was finally over. In a way, the Sheikh purchased immortality twice with the death of English. The Whispers gave him exactly what he wanted on both sides of the gate. A trillion ears heard the death cry of the false god, and among those, over 1 billion converts to the birthing pains of bloodthirsty religions. Only a select few knew the real teachings of the Golden Court, but that didn't stop countless personalities peddling false gospels of murder and salvation. And then there were those who simply wanted to possess the fear that the Bacche assassins once wielded, for there is always more room in the galaxy for a cunning cynic. Like a biological plague, covens, temples, even whole worlds fell to the strain of the Golden Court, a mind poison for the galaxy itself. Altars were dedicated to blood sacrifice, pyramids of skulls were erected, wars were fought, and planets were glassed in the names of the negentropic principle. Though for most of those, I was only vaguely aware of their happenstance. Indeed, as the apocalypse and revelation comes for a planet and even a species, those on the other side of the stars scarcely have the patience to hear. But this particular evil was personal. And while I had no doubt that there were survivors on the fringe of space, there would be no more the Golden Court in the Spiral Arm. Not in my empire. And when I dragged each zealot to the executioner's block, I made sure they knew. They all knew the name of English and Amon Russ. You've read the history textbooks, correct? I asked Albin, who was at the exit door standing at attention. At ease. This is hardly the way to have a conversation. Albin glanced my way.
I'm just a pilot, Your Eminence. I have nothing to do with this.
No, you have everything to do with what's happened today. You're part of the future of this galaxy. Everything good, everything bad my generation has ever done will fall upon your shoulders and the many like you. You will reap everything we fought for, and you'll pay for every single one of our mistakes. That's what legacy is. For my part, I tried my best to clear the galaxy of our enemies. I watched as the floor paneling of the execution dock flashed with yellow caution lights, a metal hatch opening beneath the bodies to be disposed into space. I crossed my arms. The cult of Scan were responsible for the deaths of 23 million. A revolution prompted by malice and old-fashioned neuro-washing. I've found the instinct of satisfaction dulls in old age. Of course, the Sheikh knew this. He knew that it doesn't matter at the end because it won't correct the first injustice, the evil of this universe. All I've done here is open a wound for a new monster to fill. I may wash my hands with the blood of the Golden Court, really their heretical successors, 1,000 times over, and my hands would never come up clean. The universe wouldn't be any better for it. Everything ends exactly the same as it began.
Have you ever considered that your enemies were right?
Albin pointedly asked. I smiled. It's strange, isn't it? How the frame changes everything. It is so often they applaud the fire warrior for delving into infernos to save a child, even though that child will die in the long run anyway. They sneer at the accusation of a criminal, thinking nothing of the averted future. It is true all men accomplish nothing if we stretch time beyond the impact of their lives. But what if we were to stretch things a little further beyond? Beyond the short passing of all history? What might we discover then?
Can't say I'm much one for poetical remarks.
I never could write poetry. It's one of my great regrets that I try to make up for in my prose. What I meant is a true cynic ought to hold his own cynicism skeptically, because you never know when the universe is going to make a joke of you.
You made me a promise.
Albin cut straight to what he wanted.
1 request per each trip. That was the deal. Counting the last shuttle ride, that means I now have 2. I've thought long and hard about what I want to spend them on.
I turned to him and leaned against the one-way glass. Very true. But as with all blank credit checks, let's go over the fine print. Albin raised an eyebrow.
You said anything.
A loose word if there ever was one in the galaxy. These rules are more for your sake, so you don't waste a request. As we go forward, each petition is considered binding with no takebacks. I'll accept no logic teasers that go against the spirit of this game, such as asking for more requests. You wish to undo the consequences of one of your asks? That'll cost you another trip. Shall we proceed? Or do you have an objection? The younger man thought it over, but he gave a silent affirming nod. Furthermore, each request has to be within my current power so as not to distract me from my travels. It cannot endanger either of our lives or humanity. And finally, it cannot be for anything you or I would deem gravely immoral. That is all. Albin blew out a deep breath, considering the last requirement.
What do you find gravely immoral, Emperor Ducal, Butcher of the 7 Systems of Goltep?
I glanced up at the ceiling, recollecting my long memory. Goltep. The automated drone intelligences, machine nest builders constructed by the long-lost Zigzum. Yes, I remember now. I snapped my fingers just as easily as when I gave the order. It is funny how you chose Goltep. Do you think that was a betrayal of my principles there? Did you think that was some great moral compromise for me? I think the idea that monstrous men cannot be highly moral betrays either a lack of imagination or a lack of fortitude. Albin narrowed his eyes.
Moving on. Can I ask beforehand whether the request meets the criteria?
I nodded. Albin paced the floor.
And just how many more trips are you intending?
I reached for the folds of my robes for my extendable cane. Clicking a button on the handle, the polished wood grew as if it were magic until I tapped it on the ground. If you want a piece of information like that, you'll have to burn your promised request. I suppose you can attempt to trick it out of me, or otherwise obtain it of your own means, but don't think this relationship will protect you from criminal charges. I can always find another pilot. Albin shifted his glance, frustrated, but he didn't speak. I leaned on my cane, grinning wryly at him. If you are unsure, I'll agree to hold your 2 requests until you are ready to make them.
You said this was a game earlier. I didn't really think much of it, just your infamous eccentricity. But why? Have you played this with others?
There was a pause in the room as I didn't answer. Albin slowly continued.
When we deployed with the Yamada to Rodon, I didn't think anything of it at the time. It was only later when I went backward through the logs, there was no signature from higher on the orders. You personally diverted my ship over 500 light years. And not only that, you left a smoking gun in the documents for me to find.
I remained silent, my grin growing wider. He had stumbled into my first trap.
Why?
But before Albin could continue, I raised my finger, cutting him off. I would be very careful of the choice of words for your request. Because this is a game, and I made my first move long before you ever knew you were playing. You can ask me of anything in the galaxy or ask the simple question now eating at your heart. A question I have no doubt is now worth more to you than any solar system. I don't know about you, but I am a very frugal man, and I always get what I want at a good bargain. Albin stared at me dumbstruck, blinking many times at how he so quickly found himself robbed of his first move.
How is it that you've offered me anything I want in the galaxy and I'm still somehow losing behind?
But as he was about to finish, he quickly added,
No, that is not my request.
A clever save, but wasted on a merciful man. This is not a game of wordplay for half-intelligent rhetoricians. It's a game of chess. I'll never unfairly steal your move from you, so long as you don't from me. Albin shook his head, coming to the one conclusion I had been leading him to from the beginning.
It's obvious that you diverted the Yamada for my sake. I think you're lying when you say you can get another pilot. I think you wanted me and me personally.
I raised my hands, palm upward indifferently and looking knowingly at the younger man. That is certainly one read of events.
You don't want to tell me because you have something to hide.
I tilted my head. Seems odd to put myself in a position where I would have to truthfully answer any question you asked. I think a secretive man might play things closer to the chest.
Unless you knew I was never going to ask the correct question.
Albin pointed at me as if he was unraveling the mystery. I shrugged. I've discovered that region where you assume your opponent's omniscience borders rather closely on the realm of unfounded paranoia. I would only pick up the lighter suspicions so they don't overburden you. Albin stepped forward.
No, I'm getting somewhere. So why the purpose of the game? What could you possibly have to win from figuring what I want? I'm just a shuttle pilot. What do you possibly have to gain from this?
Honestly, I would say less than you think because you could ask for a Dyson eye, and that wouldn't be too much trouble for me.
Nevertheless,
Albin raised his voice before pausing to make sure this was what he really wanted.
Who am I to you? That's my question.
I let the holy moment hang in the air before I burst out chuckling. If it's any consolation, you didn't choose the worst question. But personally, you to me? Next to nothing. Albin's eye twitched. But before he could express his anger at my trickery, I continued. It's no insult to you, of course. It's just that, living for near 1,000 years, it's really impossible to keep in touch with all my family. I said the words rather quickly, far too quickly for their weight. The sucker punch landed before Albin realized it, thinking he'd somehow misheard me, only not to be corrected by my silence. The younger man stepped back stammering, the wind knocked out of his lungs. With wide eyes, he finally managed a coherent sentence.
I'm related to you?
He waited for me to pull out the knife, to erupt into laughter and dismiss it all as some joke. I didn't. Now, great-great-nephew, there are 2 royal bloodlines ruling in this galaxy. While the answer is generally yes, you are situated on the other half of the tree. Whether that answer is better or worse for your ideals, I'll leave that up to you.
No. No. I know my parents. I know my grandparents.
I tapped the floor with my cane, walking up to Albin and putting my wrinkled hand on his shoulder. I've seen that same disbelieving face 1 billion times now. The greater your power, every sentence strikes like a zero sword. I'm a man of my words and I only speak the truth. But I've discovered ordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, yes? You want proof? I have it to give to you. In exchange for your second request, that is. I saw it in Albin's eyes. Just as quickly as I stole his first wish, I snatched the second away. He had begun this game 2 moves ahead, and now I was in the lead.
I can leave anytime I want. I should leave.
Albin gritted his teeth, trying to gain some ground back. If that's your desire, I'll radio the Yamada to send over another pilot. I told him plainly, and tapping my cane on the metal floor panel, I began walking for the bulkhead door. I was not even out of the room before Albin shouted, "Wait!" Turning to the young shuttle pilot, who looked as if his entire world had crumbled beneath him, he jerked his head as if I was forcing him to nod.
Show me the proof.
I stepped out of the way and gestured towards the exit with my arm. Then lead the way. You do know where you're going, don't you?
In special thanks to our patrons.